Hi, everyone. My name is Dua Kinde. Everyone calls me ID. So this is episode 3 of season 4 of our Dear Founder Startup Building series. It's episode 3, but it's the second concept in our set of things to think about when looking for a co-founder. Okay, so when looking for a co-founder, we spoke about 5 things. The first one, which we discussed in the last episode, is alignment of values, and I spoke about how to actually effect that in real life. In this episode, we're going to talk about those set of skills that are critical to building a startup. So if you list out all the competencies that are required to build a successful startup, are all those competencies necessary to reside in the founding team? Or is there a prioritization among those competencies to pick which ones are critical to exist in the founding team and which ones can exist outside the founding team, and the company can still be strong? So this is what we're going to be discussing in this particular episode. This is episode 3, but it's principle. It's number 2 in the list of things to think about when looking for a co-founder. So get out of your face and let's look at the material. So, like I said, this is number 2. We discussed earlier, what do you look for in a co-founder? Alignment of values, founder skills, great financial situation, team placement, and we already discussed alignment of values. Please see the previous episode for more information about that. So this episode talks about the skills that are required that are required to exist in a founding team, and in order to build a successful startup. So I have this, again, framework that I've developed for which kind of maps out. So I call it the startup skills map or the skills layout, whatever you want to call that. This essentially helps you think about how the skills and or competencies that need to exist in a business, in any startup, should be distributed, or as it were, mapped or laid out, right? So if you look at the schematic on the right, you see 3 concentric circles, right? The very center, the core, is the founding team. That's the red circle. The green circle is the operations team, which is kind of like the team of people who support the founders. And as the company grows, this operations team should grow because revenues are increasing, operations are increasing, activities are increasing, and so you need more people to support the growing level of activities. So the center circle is the founding team. These are the founders, the owners, the visionaries of the business. The green is the operations team, and the blue is kind of like the advisory team, okay, mentors and advisors. So I always say that in the context of when you're looking for a co-founder, you don't necessarily need to obsess or worry about specific skills around operations or around admin or around legal, finance, those kinds of things, because those are generic skills that can be supplied, right, and be paid for without requiring commitment. So there are certain other skills that are critical and required and are strategic to the growth of your business. What are those skills? Founding team skills. Number 1, sales skills. There's this popular saying in the startup world that in the early days of any startup, every co-founder is a salesperson, right? So you may think that, that particular startup that succeeded, my cousin was the CTO, and so that CTO never sold. I laugh in Swahili. The point being, no way. In the early days of any successful startup, any successful business actually, but in our context, any successful startup, every member of the founding team is a salesperson in the early days. So you need to sell, sell, sell. As they say, always be selling, always be closing, right? So sales is absolutely important. Even though everybody is a salesperson, you still need someone to lead the sales effort. And we'll get to that later when we talk about team placements, okay? But essentially, you need sales competence in your founding team. Now, I said earlier in the intro to this season, in the intro to season 4, that there are certain skills that need to exist in your founding team. If your founding team happens to be a team of one, aka a solo team, then there's no excuse. It just means that that one person needs to warehouse all these skills that we're talking about. And you are probably already thinking that that occurs very rarely. And now you understand the reason why, generally speaking, it's not a rule, it's not a hard rule, but it's like a soft rule of thumb. Generally speaking, investors don't like solo teams, solo founding teams. They don't like solo founders. Generally, okay? They don't like, well, I would say they don't like solo founders. They don't like investing in solo founder teams, in solo founder startups. The reason being, first of all, it's rare to find a human being, a single human being, who possesses that minimum set of critical skills that are required to be in the founding team, the core, the red area. First of all, okay. Second, sometimes there are some benefits, cognitive benefits from having someone to bounce ideas to back and forth, someone that can challenge you, someone that can encourage you, right? As a founder, when the chips are down, when you're feeling low, and so on and so forth. So that all these other benefits, accountability that investors also place a premium on. But the most important thing that I want to mention here, in the context of this conversation around the startup skills, is to remember that whatever the size of your founding team, whether it's a team of 1 or it's a team of 17, okay, please don't have a founding team of 17. That's too much. Communication will be ridiculously difficult. Decision-making will be ridiculously difficult. But whatever the size of your founding team, these skills need to exist. So perhaps one person will exhibit 3 of the skills. Another person, maybe you have a team of 3, right? One person exhibits 3 of the skills, another person exhibits 1, another person exhibits 2, right? There will be some overlap, but at least those skills are resident in the founding team. A founding team that is complete is a team that has all of the required skills resident in that founding team, regardless of the number of members of that in that team. So there you go. Founding team, sales, and what are those skills? Number 1, sales. Businesses, Zig Ziglar says, nothing happens in any business until someone makes a sale. Businesses are, by definition, sales engines. Okay, so if you are not selling, you are probably an R&D lab or something else other than a business. You're not a business, right? So sell. Sales. People need to sell, critical to the business. Now, in the modern world of startups, technology is always important. Okay, so even if you are not what's called a deep tech or a core tech startup, right? Like a startup that is building the next evolution of cloud infrastructure or the next algorithm to power search engines, right? And challenge Google and ChatGPT or something like that, right? Even if you are not in that space of deep tech, whatever your business, if your business is logistics, there is some kind of tech enablement that can improve business outcomes for you, either by increasing how much you're selling, increasing your sales, or reducing your operational costs, right? So there's tech can do something. So generally speaking, in the world of startups, there are two types of startups. There's what you call tech startups, and then there's what you call tech-enabled startups. It gets jumbled up because, you know, many people don't really think about what they're saying. You know, people just bandy words around. And so people use these words rather loosely, but just for your acknowledgement, there is what you call tech startups and what you call tech-enabled startups. So having said that, tech has obviously become important. You're not going to be building any startup in 2023 and beyond without involving technology somehow. At the very least, technology will enable one of your processes. Technology will enable your customers to reach you, either from inbound logistics to operations to outbound logistics to sales and marketing and after sales service, whatever the aspect of your business, you know, especially the customer side. And don't forget that the average customer of today is technology savvy. They will expect you to extend some technology channel for them to be able to consume your service. And if you don't provide it, they'll move to the competitor. So tech is now almost, you know, quote unquote, non-negotiable. So tech skills are also required. Now, people have often asked me, I don't want any tech person in this team. This is not, I don't want any tech person in my founding team. I do remember this particular founder that I had a conversation with. I don't want any tech person in this team. We're just going to outsource all the tech work, you know, and we'll just get the work done and let it go. I remember that I had to advise this gentleman and help him see the need that because the kind of work that is required to build a startup is not consultancy work that you can predict. It's not work that you can predict what exactly you are going to be doing in the next 2 years or 3 years or 7 years, right? It's work that emerges and unfolds as it emerges. So it's emergent work. Because of that, you are actually shooting yourself in the foot if you are not working hard to get somebody with technology expertise on your founding team, so that at least some of the tech work that needs to be done will be done as sweat equity rather than something you have to pay out of pocket. Because, like I said, you cannot estimate how much work is required to build your startup to that free rolling momentum level. And so you cannot plan how much money to have in your pocket. You are most likely, more often than not, most likely going to run out of money midway. So I always advise let the preference be to embed technology expertise within your founding team rather than technology as a supporting team. So I would place, which is why if you look at the diagram on the right, tech is in the red circle and not in the green circle. Right. Third is product. Welcome to the age of the product. Okay. I don't want to get too technical, but in product parlance and product development, there's something called the product-led growth collective. You know, essentially what this means is that modern technology is no longer delivered as technology per se. Modern technology is delivered in the context of products, right? So ChatGPT is a large language model. LLM or large language model is the technology, or, you know, AI, natural language processing is the technology. The usage of ChatGPT in the context of legal expertise gives it value to lawyers. And so the large language model that is ChatGPT in itself is useless to lawyers until somebody takes that technology and creates a product with the technology underlying it. Therefore, product expertise, right, is absolutely critical to have in your founding team. The ability to see technologies, hear about a new technology development in the news, and immediately imagine or play out in your mind or see how this changes things for not just yourself and your company, but for everybody in your sector, everybody in your space, everybody in your geography. The ability to see that and see that, okay, this changes, this new technological development has positive changes for this group of people and negative changes for this group of people in the African geography, okay, or in the African region, or in Southeast Asia, or in Europe, or in the Americas. So you have that skill. That skill needs to reside in your founding team. That is not a skill that you want to have in your operations team. So sales founding team, technology founding team, product expertise, product development, product management, absolutely critical to be on your founding team. And finally, so I mentioned a risk earlier on. I said co-founder conflict is a big deal and needs to be dealt with. Hopefully by now, with the chicken and the pig story, you're already starting to think about that, number one. Number two risk that is important and is relevant to teams is the concept of team market fit. Now, imagine that I want to build a startup in space tech. If you are close to me, I know nothing about, I know nothing about space, right? So I'm no expert in space. I have zero expertise in space. And so the point is, I need to find someone who is a domain expert, someone who can read the headlines. India landed a satellite landed a rocket on the south pole of the moon, just a few days ago. Somebody can hear that, read that news line and interpret it in the context of what we are building. Maybe that opens up a new opportunity to start, sending things to the moon, maybe having the moon as some kind of auxiliary storage backup. I don't know. I'm just thinking crazy, right? So my point being, domain expertise is important. If I want to build a health tech, I need to have someone with health expertise, healthcare industry expertise, a doctor, a pharmacist, a health administrator, somebody who spent copious amounts of years, 10 and above years in that sector. That person has a natural intuition to understand and interpret events and happenings and how they impact on the industry. And this will save you a lot of headache, as you build your startup. So in a nutshell, this is what I call the startup skills layout. It's my recommendation for mapping or distributing skills across a growing startup, a growing organization, a growing startup, such that you properly place value on which skills are necessary to exist in which area of the business. So certain skills are necessary in the founding team. We spoke about those already: sales, tech, product, and domain expertise. Certain other skills can be in your operations team: operations admin, legal, finance, and accounts. Of course, operations is sector specific. Operations in healthcare is different from operations in logistics, right? Or mobility, right? And then the outermost circle, the blue circle, the outermost layer of the organization is the advisory board, right? So where you leverage mentors and or your advisors access to certain networks, right? So perhaps a former commissioner or an ex-minister or an ex-president, right, is an advisor on your board. Automatically, there are certain doors that gentleman or that lady can open for you. And so you have access, right, to certain industries, certain social networks, certain resources, so relationships, network expertise, and sometimes money, So in a nutshell, thank you very much for tolerating my hallucinations. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.